Good afternoon. Happy Friday. I have had another really big day. I had 2 lots of radio this morning, and then I have been madly running around organising everything for my kids because I'm going to Canberra tomorrow with my teaching partner Jackie Child and also one of my other favourite TLs, XYZ. Some of you in Brisbane will know her. And Jackie and I are presenting at the ASLA conference in Canberra about the library as a centre of wellbeing, basically. So I'm going to be talking about mindful reading, and Jackie's going to be talking about everything that she does with makerspaces and how they are sort of areas of just wellbeing and creativity and all of those sorts of things. So we're really looking forward to it. But I've been super busy getting everything organised because it's a logistical nightmare for me to do anything like that these days. So I am talking this afternoon about something really different, which may or may not appeal to my normal listeners. So I'm talking about adult books today because it's the start of the holidays for most of us, and well, certainly in Queensland. I think New South Wales you're a bit later. And all of us will have a bit of a break over the Easter period with at least the public holidays. So I thought it was a good opportunity to talk to you about some adult books that I've been really enjoying and that you might also enjoy. The first one I'm going to talk about is Beyond Words, A Year with Kenneth Cook, and it's this beautiful one here. You'll notice that I've got notes today, which I don't normally have, but I also don't normally talk about adult books. And I find adult books a lot more stressful to talk about for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, this one is absolutely beautiful. It's not a memoir and it's not a biography. It's sort of a little slice of two quite well-known people in the publishing industry. It's sort of a slice of their life, a year in their life. So it's set in 1985 in Australia, and the author is Jacqueline Kent, who some of you may know as the biographer for a lot of people like Julia Gillard. She's very well known in the publishing industry. So Jacqueline Kent in 1985 was really content with her life. She had a satisfying career as an editor, and she was also emerging as a writer. She really loved her independence and wasn't looking for anything else. And then she met Kenneth Cook. Now, Kenneth Cook was 20 years her senior, and he was best known at that time for having written the Australian classic Wake in Fright. So he was sort of spoken about in the same breath as Patrick White, who is another incredibly well-known adult author from that time. They fell in love, as happens. Can't watch, just finished work and I'm driving home. Oh, that's all right, Ange. Have a great holiday. You might want to watch this later, but Ange, because some of these you'll really like. So they met, they fell in love, and, you know, they had a quite tumultuous time. Kenneth Cook had adult children who he was very close to, in fact lived in a block of apartments with, and he just adored them and they adored him. Anyway, so it's a beautiful story of their relationship, but it is also this incredible peek into the Australian book industry in 1985, in a period that was pre-internet, pre-things like Dropbox and social media, sort of, I suspect, the golden era of publishing before everything got, went online and digital, which is also fabulous, but I suspect it was just a really fabulous, well, it sounds like it was a really fabulous time to me. This is a really bittersweet novel. Kenneth Cook passes away in the novel, and that's not really a spoiler because people know that. But it's this beautiful, just as I said earlier, it's just this beautiful segment of their life together, their year that they had as a married couple. I just so enjoyed it. Their love was really nuanced and complex, and I really liked it. It's only 229 pages. I read it in a sitting, but you know, you could read it in a couple of sittings. It's not very thick. It's one of those really nice hardcovery ones. I just really liked it. It's the sort of book you can put in your handbag. I talked earlier today about the importance of adults also doing incidental reading. So if fitness experts can talk about incidental exercise, then I think as a librarian I can talk about incidental reading, and I think that to always have a book on the go is a really great thing, because then when you're sitting down you can just pull out your book instead of scrolling through social media, which I have to say is a lot of the time what I do. but I do always try to carry a book with me as well. And actually this morning when I did have a brief window, I sat down and had a cup of coffee and finished one of the adult books that I'm reading at the moment. So incidental reading, it's a thing. All right, this one, oh my gosh, absolutely loved and adored this one. Have discussed this one with one of my favourite teacher librarians, Trisha Buckley. I knew she would have read and adored this one, and she did. I'm hugging it. Okay, so Jacqueline Moriarty is one of the Moriarty sisters. So there's Leanne Moriarty, who of course is most famous probably for Big Little Lies. And then there's Nicola Moriarty, who writes adult fiction as well. And then there's Jacqueline Moriarty, who, you know, is my personal favourite because she has always written children's and middle grade fiction. So I adore her books, and my 11-year-old is currently completely and utterly obsessed with the, oh my gosh, now I can never remember the names, because they're so long. The Extremely Inconvenient Adventures of Bronte Metalstone and The Slightly Alarming Wars of the Whispering... Oh my gosh, The Slightly Alarming Tale of the Whispering Wars. So Pud is just loving those books completely. In fact, she borrowed them from my school library, but I've been instructed that they are 2 books that she also has to own because they have to go on her favourites shelf. They're just stunning sort of upper primary, middle grade books. Really enjoyed them. So this is Jacqueline Moriarty's debut as an adult author. Now I think that this, you know, is a reminder for us all that children's authors are some of the greatest around and can write anything. I also really want to say, and Jacqueline Moriarty certainly won't be watching, but I would also really like to, I'm going to hope very much that she doesn't leave children's writing behind, because I think we need writers of her calibre in the children's space. So anyway, this is one for the adults. I really, really like this one. So Boodster at the moment is reading those 2 middle grade ones that I told you about, and I'm reading this one. This one is set in, oh gosh, the 1990s, I think. This one's set in the 1990s, and the main character is a lady called Abigail Sorensen, and her brother Robert disappeared on her 16th birthday, never to be seen again. In that same year, these random bits of a self-help book titled, see I have to keep looking, titled The Guidebook keep turning up in her letterbox, just random chapters from this self-help book. And she kind of knows in the back of her head that it cannot possibly be a coincidence that she's got this brother that's disappeared, and then these self-help guides keep turning up in the mail, these chapters of a self-help guide. Oh my gosh, it's just stunning. It's quite a thick book, thicker than my average read. As I said, I like to stick with middle grade and young adult books, but I loved it. I cried buckets of tears. I laughed out loud. It totally broke me and then built me back up. It's just stunning. Jacqueline Moriarty, you know, well done. Wonderful adult debut, but please stay in children's writing and YA, please. Please, please, please don't leave us behind. Love it. It's an absolute must read. Okay, another YA author who dabbles in adult territory is Melina Marchetta. Now, Melina Marchetta will be incredibly well known to most of you as the author of Looking for Alibrandi, which a lot of you will have studied when you were in high school, and for some of you, you will can't talk this afternoon, too much radio today. For some of you, Looking for Alibrandi will have been one of your most favourite reads ever. I always feel really nervous for authors that have got a massive hit, like Looking for Alibrandi. I mean, where do you go from something like that? Melina Marchetta, of course, has gone on to write many, many, many other wonderful novels. I really like Finnegan of the Rock, and that's another one I really love of hers. Oh, on the Jellicoe Road. I just adore those ones. So Melina Marchetta does something interesting. She often puts her characters from previous novels into her new novels, and sometimes she tells a little bit of their story. They don't, you don't have to have read all of the stories, but for big Melina Marchetta fans, it's nice to revisit the stories of some of the characters. So in this one, The Place on Dalhousie, Jimmy reappears. So it's set in, I can't remember. Anyway, main character Rosie first meets Jimmy when she's walked away from her life in Sydney, and then she She leaves behind the place on Dalhousie and the house that her father, Seb, was rebuilding and renovating. He sadly passed away before it was finished. Her mother had died some years earlier, and Seb, her father, had remarried quite quickly. So Seb has now passed away. Although Seb has passed away, he's the father, it feels like he's a character in the story. Because the story kind of centres around him. It's about Rosie returning to the place on Dalhousie and kind of coming to, not blows, but, you know, she's having to come back and work out with Seb's new wife, her stepmother, you know, what's going to happen with this house? How do they both fulfill the dreams that they had for the house and that Seb had for the house? This is a beautiful story of community and of connectedness and of belonging and of what belongs to you and what belongs to me and what doesn't belong to me, to you. It's just this gorgeous, gorgeous story. It's utterly beautiful. Another one that Trish Buckley absolutely adored. All right, Shell. I suspect we're going to see Shell on quite a few shortlisted lists pretty soon. And in fact, I think it was on the ABIA. Yes, it was. The ABIA Awards shortlists were announced yesterday, and that one is on there for the literary work. I have a feeling one of the others I'm talking about is also. And also, I was really pleased to see Too Much Lip by Melissa Lukashenko on those ABIA lists, because Melissa Lukashenko, I have an extreme crush on Melissa Lukashenko. She's one of my favourite adult and YA authors. I adore her, and I've been in her presence a number of times, and I've never been quite game to say, hi, I really love you. Anyway, to this one, just look at that cover. It is gorgeous. It's obviously about the Sydney Opera House. It's set in 1965, which was an interesting year in Australian history, which I knew nothing about. I found this story just really, really fascinating from a historical fiction point of view. But I guess it could be classified as historical fiction, but it's so much more than that. It's I think, going to be one of the great Australian novels. So it's set in 1965, which was the year when the Sydney Opera House was emerging from the ground. It was being built, and it was transforming the Sydney skyline. I'm going to have to read a bit of this, otherwise I'll just rabble on. Pearl Keogh is a fierce journalist who's been exiled to the women's pages after being photographed at an anti-war protest. She's also incredibly desperate to find her two missing brothers and save them from the draft. So that's the other thing that is happening in 1965. The shadow of the Vietnam War and the deadly lottery, which is obviously sending a lot of young men overseas. So Pearl's mother passed away when she was young, and her father descended into alcoholism, and he gave up the children. He couldn't look after them anymore. Pearl actually ran away from the orphanage and I guess essentially left her brothers there, and she now knows they're at the age where they could be conscripted into the army, so she's desperate to find them. So we have Pearl's story, and then we have the story of Axel, who is where's he from? He's a visionary young glass artist from Sweden, and he is obsessed with creating a piece of glass, a glass sculpture for the inside of the Sydney Opera House. Their lives do connect, but not a fair way until a fair way into the story. It's just this stunning story about that time in history, about grief and loss and family and what family means to different people. It's utterly beautiful. It's a bit of a slow burner. So again, I'm used to reading YA fiction, which is very fast moving, I guess, to keep young people entertained, and it's shorter. This one is one that you have to really, you've got to stick with it. It's not that it's boring, because from the first page I knew I was going to adore it, but it's a slow burn. Joe Mitchell, who won't be watching, loves a bit of Tim Winton. I don't love a bit of Tim Winton, but I know Joe Mitchell will like this one because it's got that similar slow beauty that I know Tim Winton does well. I'm just not a Tim Winton fan. Like his kids' books. This one is just, Shell is just elegant. It's sophisticated. It made me feel like a proper adult. It made me feel like maybe I should join an adult book club because I was reading a really literary book. I just adored it. Christina Olsen has a memoir as well, which is Boy Lost, which is this most beautiful, beautiful memoir of her brother and losing him and finding him again. Love all that Christina Olsen does. All right, hurry along, Megan. And then the last one I've got to talk about is Teen Brain by David Gillespie. I don't know what to think about David Gillespie. He was a man that came out years ago with Sweet Poison. He was a lawyer turned kind of researcher and non-fiction writer. He's extremely well known. He has absolute bestsellers. He's done Sweet Poison. He's done Taming Toxic People. He's done one on oils and fats. He's done all sorts of... he basically just researches things and writes non-fiction books. I was worried this book would be very alarmist. It's a non-fiction book on the teen brain and why, I'll read you out the byline, why screens are making your teenager depressed, anxious, and prone to lifelong addictive illnesses, and how to stop it now. I find that quite alarmist, and I'm not a fan of alarmist stuff when it comes to online safety and social media and all of those sorts of things, because I think we don't know yet the effects of all of these things long term. Obviously, we have to be cautious, but I also think it's wrong to be alarmist about them. However, I was pleasantly surprised to find that the book was not as alarmist as it first appears. I really enjoyed it, in fact. It's got super duper interesting short chapters interspersed with some bit of storytelling and some diagrams. It looks at the adolescent brain. It looks at caring and for and feeding a garden variety teenager, which I liked. So it talks about school and sleep and how to manage screens at home with your teen. It talks about depression and anxiety, and it talks about addiction and how he believes that we are... by not putting any boundaries in place, we could be causing addiction issues later in life. It's a really, really interesting read. As a teacher, I absolutely enjoyed it. As a parent, I hope that some of it is alarmist, because bits of it I felt were very... I don't want to be a dictator I'd like my kids to find their own way with some of this online stuff, but I also am aware I'm the parent and it's my call in the end. So I really, really enjoyed this book, and it had some great tips in it, and I would highly recommend it. Yeah, but I guess like anything, you have to make it fit with your family context. And finally, this one's not on my list, but oh my gosh, I so enjoyed this one, The Aunt's House. Aunt Harris, if you're still listening, I think you'll really like this one. The Aunt's House is by Elizabeth Steed, who is Christina Steed's niece, who was a great Australian writer. Now, Elizabeth Steed is, oh gosh, let me get her age right. She's 86, and this is her 6th novel. It is stunning. It is set in 1942 in wartime Sydney. Recently orphaned, Angel Martin moves into a boarding house which is strategically located next to the local sanitarium where her own mother died of significant mental health issues. It's populated, this boarding house is populated by some very eccentric characters, but there's a not very nice landlady called Miss Potts who really does make Angel Martin's life hell. This is a very Dickens-inspired, I feel. As I was reading it, the eccentric, quirky, adorable, lovable characters really reminded me of some Dickens characters. And in fact, as I was reading, I thought, oh yeah, I see what you're doing, Elizabeth Steed. She references Dickens a number of times, so it's definitely not accidental. The characters are divine. Angel Martin basically has no family, but she does have these aunts who live by the bay, and she visits them every Sunday. They want nothing to do with her, and they completely ignore her as she tries to weasel her way softly, gently into their life. Angel has had this really, really horrific childhood, and you could feel really sad for her, but she is just so determined that her past will not shape her future, and she knows there's better things ahead of her. As she catches the tram each Sunday, which she loves, to her aunt's house to basically sit outside and watch them, she hears whispers about her. A lot of the women on the tram whisper things like autism. Mrs. Potts says all the time to her that she's not right in the head. And you know, for parts of the book, Angel does talk to herself, and as a reader you are reading sort of in Angel's head often, and Angel sees things in colours and in music. So, you know, I love that she's never given, I guess, a label. Not you probably would have been in 1942, but I suspect there's either some mental health issues or just quirkiness. I kind of love that Angel dances on this line between quirkiness and mental illness, and so do many of the characters. I just loved it. Angel was just the pluckiest, most determined, wonderful character I've met in a long time. I really deeply enjoyed this book. I hope it finds a really wide audience because I just adored it. All right, that is 6 books. I slipped an extra one in. I hope you all have a really good weekend. As I said at the beginning, I'm off to Canberra to speak at the ASLA conference. I'm doing Canberra radio Monday afternoon now, 3 o'clock, with someone called Leash. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conference. I love conferences and I love Canberra. So, you know, should be great. Hope you get some reading done over the weekend. And if you want to purchase any of those books, I've linked to them in the little thingy at the top. And I've also linked to the iBook links, many of which, if you click on the author's name, you can then get the audio of. I've got the audio of Dark Emu to listen to on the way down to Canberra, which is the Bruce Pascoe book, because he is coming and doing a lecture in Brisbane very soon. And I'm very, very keen to have read Dark Emu before I meet him. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye.